Good morning, everybody. Thanks for attending the webinar today. What to expect from a OSHA inspection. So believe it or not, folks, Bob received just a text message that OSHA was knocking on their door.
Yep, just 2 minutes ago. I had to forward that on to another associate to take care of it. So they are out there. Getting started.
So thank you to our safety partners out there. Thanks for being part of our OECS foundation and making safety a priority every day. And some of the people we'll mention are TSSA, Tri-State Safety Association.
There's the ABC, Associated Building Contractors.
Don't forget about the good folks from the Northern Region Association of Safety Professionals.
And then there's the Building Industry Association of the Red River Valley, the BIA.
We're not going to mention all, but the last one we'll mention is the Lakes Area Manufacturers Alliance. So for those folks that don't realize who we are OECS. We've been creating great safety solutions for a variety of different businesses. We are located locally in the Minneapolis area, St. Louis Park, to be matter of fact, and we also have a Fargo office.
As you can see on the screen, these are some of the different things that we cover and can assist you with. Don't be afraid to reach out.
Absolutely. So today we're going to ask one important ingredient to make this presentation a little better. We're going to ask for you to help us. Your involvement is very important.
If you've got questions, don't be afraid to type them in the chat box. We've got panelists that will direct those questions and answer those questions, or they might just direct them to us for us to answer.
Perfect.
This presentation is being taped and recorded so that it will be available on our website. Probably in about a day. Somewhere's right in there within that 24-hour time frame.
And learning outcomes, we'll go over a variety of good information. So first thing we'll tell you is preparing for an OSHA inspection is high priority. It should be if you're a business owner or a leader at your organization. So today we'll be able to understand the process of an OSHA inspection.
You will be able to explain the difference between a programmed inspection, a targeted inspection, a complaint, a referral, a special emphasis, and a fatality or an incident investigation.
Like anything else in life, the better prepared you are and having a plan, it's no different for preparing for an OSHA inspection. Like Bob said earlier, they come at unforeseen times at any moment. So creating a plan to be properly prepared will be a priority today.
Part of that plan is going to be identifying what and who to communicate to. Who on your leadership team do you want to let know that, oh my goodness, OSHA's knocking at the door? What other key employees need to be involved? Typically, what we experience is us as the associates for you, our clients. And in addition to that, it's going to be maybe the CEO, maybe the division manager, maybe the project manager. How do you identify what to communicate and to who?
Very critical part of the process. And then we'll have some talking points on OSHA citations, and we'll show you some examples of what some of the common penalties are. And then we'll follow up with a question and answer. So please start preparing your questions for us as we go through the presentation today. Good news is for you folks that would like a CEU, this is a continuing education unit and you'll get credit for it. If you are one of those fine folks, please contact Jennifer Erickson at jennifer@oecscomply.com. And introductions, I guess I'll start, Bob. I'm Danny Hoffman. I'm a regional manager. I've been working for OECS for almost 5 years. I bring a plethora of active duty military experience behind me. I have a diversified background, including sales, training, management, and safety operations.
Thanks, Danny. I'm Bob Williams, and I've been doing safety for 23, 4, somewhere's in that time frame, on construction for construction contractors. I've spent 8 years as a safety director for 2 different contractors, electrical and a general, and love doing a lot of teaching and training on fall protection, electricity, you name it, we can train on it.
Thanks, Bob. So OSHA expectations, let's talk about what they are. So are they a friend or foe? So OSHA will provide a framework that ensures your employees are safe where they're working, right? Doesn't matter if it's a construction site or
In a
possibly
facility,
Yep.
warehouse, office, manufacturing, you name it.
So unfortunately, one of the things that OSHA can do, it's called the general duty clause. To sum it up in a nutshell, is every employer must properly train their folks on all the hazards of where they're working and provide them the proper resources to be what? Safe, right?
Absolutely. Make sure that you're getting everybody trained, make sure that you've got a place that's in good working order. That just helps, having that nice looking place.
Yep. So the general duty clause is considered the catch-all. If the Code of Federal Regulation doesn't answer it, or if there's a regulation not concerning it, they often will cite the general duty clause as a catch-all.
When you look at the enforcement side of it, here in Minnesota, we've got the Minnesota statutes, we've got the general industry statutes on the federal that are used from the federal standards, the 29 CFR 1910. We've also got the 29 CFR 1926 construction standards. And then there's the Minnesota plan, the chapter 182. You're going to find those where they interchange. They're kind of the same, but there's just little nuances that are a little bit different. When we look at, and then within that chapter 182, you've got chapters 5205 through 5215, and they're divided between general industry, construction, and then some of those overlap construction, general industry, and or maritime or logging as well. So they're all involved in there, and that's where that enforcement's going to come from. That's where they're going to pull those standards from.
Thanks, Bob. So types of inspections, let's discuss a couple that you might see out there. Before we do that, we're going to do survey number 1. So the question of this survey is, if OSHA walked into your business right now to conduct an audit, how do you think your organization would fare? And the choices are excellent. We know exactly what to do, no issues, or B, fair, we're not as ready as we'd like to be, and C, not good. So be honest with your answers and we'll tally up the results.
Our goal is by the end of this webinar that we're going to move all of you to that path to get to that answer of A. Because when they show up, you want to have an excellent look in place. You want them to go, I shouldn't find too many things, if anything at all, when we take a walk through your job site or your facility. All right, we've got our answers in. So it looks as though the majority of you are rating yourself as fair. You're not as ready as you'd like to be, but you're okay. There are, and then, excuse me, there's a number of you that feel that you're in excellent condition and you have no issues at all. That's awesome that you are feeling that way. Don't let that get in your way of not continuing to be excellent. You always got to be moving forward. And those of you that mark not good, that's what we're here to help you with, is to move up that scale.
Absolutely. So types of inspections. So it doesn't matter where you're coming from, as far as what industry. OSHA will inspect general industry, your health industry, the construction sectors, or from a complaint. And if there has been a serious injury, and hopefully not a fatality at your workplace, OSHA will investigate these types of incidents as well.
And you know, Danny, one of the things that we're running into a lot more lately on the construction side of things is that complaint or that referral. And just talking with another safety person this morning about that, the general public is getting more knowledgeable with safety. And so they're making phone calls as well and saying, hey, I see something that I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it sure has got me concerned. That's some of that complaint that's coming out.
Absolutely. That's kind of been the general consensus out there. If I'll call it the nosy neighbor next to you sees something that isn't quite right, he or she will get their camera out and send a picture to OSHA.
When we're looking at the program selection process, this is where OSHA, let's just say here in Minnesota, MinOSHA, they're going to look within the public sector at the NIAC codes. Each contractor, each company, whether you're a facility, a warehouse, a manufacturing, whether you're a general contractor or a trade contractor, especially trade, they're going to look at your NIAC code and they're going to say, oh, these people here are kind of busy right at the moment.
Absolutely.
And they're going to target you for that reason. I shouldn't maybe necessarily use the word target, but they're going to come and make a visit.
Absolutely. So if you do have or do business that is considered the highest rates within a state or region, those type of activities that you do at work will be scheduled first. And this list is used for a 5-year period.
Again, with those programmed inspections, you're going to versus the unprogrammed inspections, the programmed ones, as it says on the scale or on the screen. Oh my gosh. It's those inspections of work sites and facilities that, based on what you're doing, how that serious level is, like what you mentioned in that previous slide, you're in an industry that is higher for injury. They're gonna come and visit you first. That's where that program comes in.
Very good. So good. If you're in the construction business, if you're doing any type of fall protection, or if you're on top of roofs, you would be considered one of those industries that would be doing a high risk activity. So the unprogrammed can be a variety of different things. It could be a complaint that came in, or it could be just the OSHA inspector. So if you are, again, using a high crane, guess what you're saying? Hey, Mr. and Mrs. OSHA, I'm over here, right? And they might drive by the work site, and if they see something that doesn't look right, they have a camera. They can sit in a parking lot, and often they do take pictures from a long distance and knock on your door.
So when they do knock on the door, their scope is going to be typically one of two things. It's either going to be comprehensive, which, as you see on the screen there, it tells us that it's gonna be substantial. They're gonna look at everything. They're gonna really dig in. Or it's gonna be a partial, and that's when it's focused. It's gonna be something that, to your point, Danny, they got that complaint that, gosh, there's a fall hazard. All right, they're gonna come in, they're gonna focus just on that complaint. But at the same time, they could open that up to a comprehensive inspection that then they're gonna open it up to looking at everything.
Absolutely. So let's look at what's involved during the investigation. So some of the things OSHA is allowed to do, they can enter your facility. So please welcome them with some hospitality. They can investigate within a reasonable limits and manner, and they will inspect structures, machines, apparatus, device, equipment, and any materials that are within the work site or facility.
So when they're looking at that equipment or the structure or the devices, can they take them apart? No, cannot do that. But they can stand back, they can look at it, and they can make that observation of it. What does it look like? Does it look like it's running properly? Has it got all the guards in place? And if they've got questions, then they can do the next thing on the list, which is interview. So if you're the operator of this machine, and I perceive that it isn't functioning right, or there's something kind of wacky with it, tell me, Danny, about this machine and how it operates.
Exactly. So they will interview, especially forklift operators, or if you have a scissors lift or any type of machinery, they'll ask who operates that piece of equipment, and they will do an interview.
Yep. They'll typically pull that individual aside from us that are maybe walking with the OSHA inspector.
Mhm.
They're going to have a conversation just to learn a little bit more. I always like to say afterwards, it's like, Danny, you had a conversation with the OSHA guy. What was that conversation about? If you don't mind my asking, if you don't want, you don't have to tell me, but
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. So we'll give you some good advice on how to navigate when OSHA investigator does arrive on your work site. So OSHA will have some type of camera with them, and they're looking for what in the workplace? Hazards, right?
Yep.
And they'll, as they discover them, they're gonna do what?
They're going to take a picture.
So here's a good thing. Whenever OSHA's taking a picture of, you should probably be what?
Taking a picture.
Absolutely, Bob. So same thing with taking notes. If they're at, you have the ability to ask him or her, Mr. and Mrs. OSHA, what are you taking a note of? What's your observation here? And then you should do what?
Take a note.
Absolutely. So if they are taking any type of measurement, please verify the measurements, as that can be evidence in your citation packet.
So you should also carry a tape measure with you, because if
Absolutely.
they do pull that out and take a measurement, definitely you measure it as well. Or again, back to that camera, if they pull out their tape measure and you don't have one with you, or nobody in the group that's walking has a tape measure, that's okay, because you've got that camera all on your phone. Have them reset it up and then take a picture of that measurement so that you've got it. Because when they take pictures, they can show you the picture from their camera, but they can't give you the picture.
Yep.
That's why you want to take pictures. That's why you want to take those notes. That's why you want to double check everything.
It's great advice. Thanks, Bob. So an OSHA investigator looks for hazards, and the hazards are anything that potentially could cause an injury or illness to your employees and staff members, both in your facility or on a construction site.
Can they call can, if there's a potential and somebody's not working right by that thing, is that still a potential?
Mhm.
It is.
Mhm.
It is. It's because that has the potential of causing somebody harm. And that's what they're looking for.
And then other things, we'll just go right down the list here, are standards and rules applicable. General duty clause, we talked about it. Is it a serious violation? How about employee exposure and proximity to the hazard? So there's two hats OSHA wears. One might be an industrial hygienist, and they are also allowed to do an investigation at your work site as well, both in construction and in manufacturing industries. And they'll look for exposure levels. They're going to look at permissible exposure levels, work conditions, and both your employee and employer knowledge.
Absolutely. One of those exposure proximity to hazards, this just when you brought up that IH person, I can recall OSHA being on a job site and one of the contractors on the job site, everybody had their own little break areas and they just weren't taking the trash out. Well, they didn't have a cover for that trash. So guess what? There was a conversation that was had, there was knowledge that was shared back and forth that, look, this is a workplace hazard because of the condition of the trash.
Mm-hmm.
Just something to think about. Proximity to hazard, absolutely. How long are people exposed to that open trash bin? Gosh, that particular one, it looked like for quite a long time because the trash was just overflowing.
Yep, I agree. So here's the, if you want a back plan, you could use this list on what OSHA potentially could inspect you for. So number one, and it's been number one for a long time, would you agree?
Absolutely. Ever since OSHA's been around since 1971, this has been at the top of the list, whether it's construction or general industry.
Yep. And once again, as a reminder, if you're working in a manufacturer setting and you're working at heights greater than
6 feet or
in the construction industry, they use
6 feet.
Yep.
General industry, they're using 4.
Yep. Yep.
So number 2 on that list is going to be that hazard communication. In Minnesota, we've got the Minnesota Employee Right to Know standard, and that's what it's almost identical to the federal hazard communication, although again, there's some nuances that make it a little bit different. But no training, no program, no draw a blank. No knowledge on your SDS sheets and where those are kept.
Yep. Yep. Those are all big things to remember. And bottom line, as an employer, you must properly communicate all hazards. Doesn't matter what industry you're working in, to your employees and provide them training, right?
Absolutely.
How to prevent them from being hurt or injured. So number 3 is ladders. So there's a variety of things you need to do for extension ladders. And believe it or not, they look for labels and stickers attached to your ladders.
Yep.
What's number 4?
Respiratory protection, not having that medical evaluation done. What are you using for respiratory protection? Are people required to wear a respirator? What type of a respirator? Half mask, full face, a scab. Maybe it's a small, what we call in the construction industry, a dust mask. It's got just a little white with 2 straps. That's going to be a respiratory protection device. And then medical evaluation done on what the people are wearing for that particular situation.
Absolutely. So to understand scaffolding, right, you got to have your fall protection. So it can be in a variety of different forms. Typically they're guardrails. And then your lockout, tagout, the annual periodic inspection, you should be definitely doing that, assessing your lockout, tagout procedures on an annual periodic inspection. You want to take number 7?
Absolutely. Powered industrial trucks. So there's 7 different types of powered industrial trucks. Everybody that's going to operate whatever one of those is going to have actual training on it, certification behind it. In the construction industry, most everybody's using your rough terrain forklifts, your lulls, that type of.
Yep.
But at the same time, they also use your warehouse style forklifts. So you have to have 2 different certifications there.
And then fall protection, there's no training and proper personal protective equipment. And then lastly, number 10 is machine guarding. That includes hand and power tools, including all of your fancy milling and manufacturing equipment. So if the rule of thumb is, folks, if the tool had a guard on it when you bought it, it needs to stay on the life of the tool, right?
Absolutely.
So another great question is, OSHA has arrived, now what?
Well, when they show up, they should be showing you their credentials. What are those credentials? Can you read them? Can you look at them? Absolutely. If they don't show them to you, definitely ask for them. And ask them why they're here.
Absolutely.
Why are you here? Did they receive a complaint? Is this a program? Is this a non or an unprogrammed visit? Why are they here?
I'm going to go all the way down at the bottom. So if you are a client of OECS at this time, this would be a good opportunity for somebody in your leadership team to do what? Notify us, right?
Give us a call.
A text, let them know that OSHA's arrived, and hopefully we're in close proximity. If your individual assigned associate cannot be there, the good news is we have a lot of people in the Minneapolis area.
We do. And that example just took place here before we got started, where I received a phone call and I passed that on to another associate so that they can take care of that client.
And then briefly, we'll get into the plan. Who's going to be part of the inspection? What are their specific roles? And what to do. So let's move on.
Opening conference. When they arrive, they're going to tell you that we have to do an opening conference, and they're going to in that conference, they're going to tell you why they're there. Again, if they haven't already, or if you haven't asked, they're going to want to look at your 300 log. They're going to want to look at your any IH reports that you might have, your program. Let them look at your program. If you're on a construction site, let them share your trade partners, your subcontractors, their programs with that inspector. Give them the opportunity to look at that in the training records. That's all part of that opening conference.
Right. So at this time, if your OECS assigned associate is not there, what should you do? Pull out your binders. Ask them. They are very familiar. OSHA is, Minnesota OSHA in particular, who OECS is, and they will have them review your programs, and hopefully within minutes later, one of the OECS safety associates arrive at your site, and then we can proceed from there. But they're going to ask, one of the big things is your record. So you don't know what an OSHA 300 is. We'll talk about that coming up. And then now they're going to ask to see your work site or your facility and conduct a walk around.
In that walk around, the obvious is they're going to look for hazards and within the workplace. Kind of what we mentioned before, they're going to do that interview. Even if everything is beautiful, they might pull somebody aside and say, hey, come here, I want to just ask you a few questions. They like to ask questions of the apprentices, of the new employees. So, which that's okay, as long as you've given them all some good information, train them. When was the last time? Did they get training when they started? Did they get training just recently? What does that training look like?
And that would be a key time for somebody in your leadership team to walk through your production area or your work site and make sure all of your staff is wearing what?
Proper PPE.
You got it, my friend. So we can do a couple things at that time. So in the manufacturing sector, if you have a machine that's very loud, maybe you want to postpone the using that machine until what?
After that walk.
100%. That's great advice. And then the IH investigators will be looking at permissible exposure levels. Where do we find that information? It's from our safety data sheets. And they'll look at and do interviews for any of the IH concerns that they have.
Then that last bullet there is the time required for this is going to vary. I've seen it go as fast as 15 minutes, and I've seen it go as long as 4.5 hours. And I don't know what you've experienced, Danny, but
pretty much the same.
Yeah.
It varies. It depends on the investigator. If he or she has a lot of program visits, then it might be on the shorter end. However, they can be as long as it takes.
it can, and one of those things that might drive that is in this picture. What are some of the things that they're seeing when they initially step foot into your facility? What does it look like?
So no better words, a first impression is a lasting impression. So if you have the ability to during the opening conference, send a few folks out and stand up pallets, that's a big safety concern. And general duty clause, right? Another item to look at is, this is a big one for first impressions, right? Housekeeping.
How is everything organized? Is everything stacked up nice and neat, or is there stuff sitting here, there, and everywhere? Walk onto a construction site.
So they'll use their eyes, their nose. I mean, if it looks clean, it's organized, that's a good impression, and it's going to set you up for success. And then hazard communication, Bob did talk about it earlier. So we're going to specifically talk about chemicals. So if you look at the container there, that's called a secondary container. All secondary containers need what, Bob?
They need a secondary label.
They sure do.
And that label can look, so if you really want to get technical, a label like this is what should go onto that secondary container. Yep. It needs to have the product identification of what the chemical is. It needs to have a signal word, and you get 3 choices: danger, warning, or it's just not applicable.
Mm-hmm.
A pictogram needs to be a part of that secondary label. And then any other information like what you see at the bottom there. One of the cool things that we're experiencing with OECS is that both MinOSHA and FedOSHA are allowing us to write on that container, right? What is in this container? Is it soapy water? Your Sharpie, soapy water. Is it bleach? Bleach, right? They want to know what's in that container.
So all containers need to be what?
Secondary labeled.
Right, you got it, Fred. So your safety data sheets, often what we discover is either they're not physically in a paper binder, or your staff doesn't know how to access the electronic ones.
Both are acceptable.
You got it.
Your regular binder, hard binders, is what you see in the picture, or an electronic version. And that electronic version can be in a couple different fashions. You can have a software that houses that everybody in the company has got access to off of their phones. It could be just on, say, the foreman or the superintendent or the boss's iPad, computer, that then everybody can just access. Or one of the things that I'm starting to see is contractors on their websites are putting a little tab on there for employee access. Everybody's knows what that password is. Boom, right there. That's where their safety data sheets are.
Those are great tips to make this part of the inspection go well for you.
One of the other interesting things is back to those interviews, when
Mhm.
they pull people off to the side, this is gonna be one of the questions that's typically asked, at least from my experience,
Yep.
is Mr. OSHA is gonna say, do you know where your safety data sheets are?
Mhm.
That's part of that training that we need to help everybody understand where they can find them. One of the interesting things is I've had contractors say, oh yeah, we've got, it's sitting underneath the passenger seat of the pickup truck. As long as everybody knows where it is, we're good.
It's good advice, Bob. Thank you. So fire hazards. If you ever listen to the local news channel, what do we see a lot of? Fires, either in residential houses or even at businesses. So this is kind of what we call the low-hanging fruit of OSHA. And it doesn't matter if you're on a construction site or in a manufacturing facility. So right now, on the construction site, being the colder inclement temperatures, what are they doing?
They're in closing. They're either piling up those windows and doors, or they're actually putting the windows and doors in, and then they're bringing heaters in.
You got
Warm
that right.
that space up.
Yep.
So then where are your fire extinguishers? Where are
Right.
they located?
And then proper egress. So just a quick reminder, please make sure all your exit doors are free and clear. There's nothing obstructing it, because if your staff needs to get outside in case of there was a fire or emergency, they
They
have
can
the
do that.
ability to.
Then we look at machine guarding. This is, obviously everybody can tell that this is a table saw, right? That guard over that blade has to be in place all the time. And whether it's a table saw, whether it's a 4-inch grinder, whether it's a partner saw, you go into facilities and they've got guards so that you can't get your fingers into the press.
Yep.
Those guards have to be in place.
Mhm.
Whether somebody's operating that tool or not, or that piece of machinery or not, that guard has got to be there.
Yep. So two requirements for machine guarding. The guard must be on, and most importantly, it has to be adjusted. So to keep you safe. So
Lockout, tagout. You know, this is really important, and it's, for whatever reason, we've gotten lackadaisical in the last few years. They're really looking at lockout, tagout. What's your program? Do you understand your program? Where are you locking out a piece of equipment? And in the construction industry, even on a construction site, you got to change out a breaker. Are you locking things out? Do you need to lock things out? Do you need to shut it off? Can you do it live or energized? They want to know what your takeout program is and what it looks like, which then brings us to this next slide.
So the procedures, here's a good example of what a good lockout procedure should have. So the old phrase, a picture's worth 1,000 words, that is something I endorse big, especially with lockout tagout.
Absolutely. Right. What do you need in that program? Do you need photos, to Danny's point? Absolutely, because if you have a lot of things written of steps and everything, that's good. However, if you've got a picture with that step, or like you see in this diagram here, that electrical 480 volt, okay, this is where we do it. Another picture of a lock that you can put on that. It just helps because visuality is highly important.
And please laminate the procedures and have them where?
In your program, or easily accessible, or in a facility at the machine.
Yep, those are good advice. So the next thing is they've done their inspection, they've made their rounds, they've taken their pictures, you've taken pictures along with their pictures. Questions have been asked along the way. And now the final discussion will be called the closing conference.
In that closing conference, they're going to talk about, to your point, what you just said is things that they found. They're going to talk about, on this particular hazard, or citation that they're going to talk about. Let's use a tool that's missing a ground plug. If there's a tool that's missing a ground plug, they're going to talk about abatement dates. You know what? If you can cut that cord right then and there, you've abated that issue. And then that will be part of that notation that will come up in the closing conference. Depending on what it is, they're going to want to know what that abatement is or
Yep.
what it might look like. And then typically they're going to tell you that you've got X amount of time to get that abated.
So the abatement dates will be discussed.
A question, Bob and Danny, is it okay to ask during that closing conference if they will possibly cite for any violations?
Absolutely. Because usually in that conference is where they're going to let you know that, look, we're going to cite on this particular hazard. That cord, for example, if they see that the missing pin is there, so they're going to write that down in their notes and yep, that's going to be a citation. So then, well, gosh, what can we do to abate it? Well, can we cut the cord? Absolutely. Cut the cord, take a picture. We've got that documented.
And I asked the question because I've had situations where it wasn't asked and all of a sudden they get the packet and they're surprised that there's this huge violation. And if it wasn't discussed during the closing conference, that's kind of an issue. So it's good to at least have some inkling of what could be possibly cited. So you can start your own abatement process before you even get the packet, and that you're not shocked or surprised that something came out of left field and was not discussed during the closing conference.
One of the things that I've done with that is if you've got a whiteboard in your conference room or in the room where you're meeting with that inspector doing this closing conference. All right, tell me what you see that we're going to possibly get a citation on. Citation 1, write it out. Citation 2,
Perfect.
how many ever it is, and then everybody takes a picture of it. I'll take a picture of it, and then I've had the OSHA person actually go, that's a really good idea. I'm going to take a picture of it too. Because then now we've gone through and we've talked about those possible citations and what comes. And then hopefully the surprise that Mark was talking about is, oh, they didn't cite us on that.
All right.
Nice surprise.
So the investigator will discuss your rights and responsibilities. However, penalties will not be discussed. You'll see a citation packet that'll be delivered to you in the mail. So be on the lookout for that.
When that comes, it will have that dollar figure, that citation amount on there. Minnesota's specific chart, the severity level, they're going to look at this based on the injury or the illness that could reasonably be expected. And I'm reading it, but it's that exposure, depending on what that exposure is, what that level is. That's what they're going to call out these dollar numbers. Non-serious, anywhere from 0 to 500 if it's less than 4 people.
Right.
If it's a fatality and it's non-negotiable, you're looking at a lot of money.
Absolutely. So if you are during your walk around, if they're going to cite for something, you want to have the non-serious types of potential citations, and you definitely don't want to be a repeat or a willful. That can be game changing. Yeah.
On the federal side, this is what they're looking at. This is, again, same scenario as in Minnesota, but in your state, in your states that are federally governed, this is how they're going to look at the penalty. If it's a serious or a failure to abate, that's in there.
So some of the amounts are for serious citation per violation is $1,116 all the way up to $15,625 per violation. And then failure to abate is $15,625 per day past the unabated date.
When you get that packet, this is what the site, this is one of the pages that it's gonna look like. If you haven't ever received one, awesome. This is what you're gonna see when it comes in. Sometimes there's gonna be more than just these 20 pages. Sometimes it's gonna be just the 20 pages. It could be a little bit less.
Yep.
But when we get down to the nitty gritty, citation, notification of penalty, this is what you're gonna look at. They're gonna tell you that you have to post it in a certain spot, certain place. They're gonna give you information about having an informal conference if you so desire. And then the second page, or page 6, as you see on the screen, it's going to give you the actual citation. It's going to give you the number that they're citing, the standard, whether it's general industry, whether it's construction, maybe it's a Minnesota standard. They got to list it, and then they got to list what that standard says. And then typically the second paragraph might be the second sentence. It's going to say what that inspector saw.
Good point. So in this particular citation, it's a serious citation they're proposing. And this one is the proposed penalty of $9,239.
Big money.
It is. So obviously, if you disagree with that, you have the right to do what?
Notice of contest. You get in this packet is going to be another, and this is going to be those additional pages. You're going to get this form here, which is notice of contest. You can submit this. And that's where you, up on the second page when you're looking at the screen on your right, what's the citation number? What's the item number? And then what of those 4 things do you want to discuss in that informal conference? Do you want to talk about the citation itself? Do you want to talk about the type of violation? Do you want to talk about the abatement date? Maybe if you've already abated it, if you've cut that cord on that tool,
Yep.
you don't have to check the abatement date because it's already done, taken care of. And then you can also, if you want to talk about the penalty, you definitely want to check that box. They also want to know what the reason for contest is. And it can be like it says there, see what's attached, because you might have a big paragraph of why that won't fit in that box.
So be concise in your reason for contest. I call it the W's: who, what, where, when, and why it happened.
Yep. In the yellow box there, that definitely has got to be filled out. It's got to be posted. If you're a union contractor or a union facility, the union rep has to be notified. They have to be told that you've received a citation so that they can inform their employees if necessary. If you're non-union, you've got to just post it in the work area so that everybody can read it and see it.
All right. Well, let's talk about documentation. It's probably one of the bigger parts of it. So we'll start the survey here. Does your team know the location of the required documentation required during an OSHA visit? And please be truthful. We'll send that out to the audience. We'll wait for your response.
Yes, for number A, people know where it is. B, I think so, but golly, we need to check and let people know. Or C, nobody has any idea where our program, our policies, or any documentation might be.
And as they are tallied up, it looks like the majority is in the B range. I think so, but I'd have to check.
Yeah. So that's good, right? That's what this is about, is jogging that memory and having that conversation with everybody, making sure everybody knows where everything's at.
Some of the things they'll look for is going to be your OSHA logs, and they'll ask for 3 years of these types of accident logs. To include, there's your OSHA 300, and you have a 300A. So you can file these electronically too, and that might be a good way for you to do it each year.
They're also going to want to look at training records, see what you've got for training, what has been done. That's important.
All right, preparation. Let's prepare for the unexpected, right? So safety programs, we talked about it. Make sure you do a good job with that. Understand what needs to be done, make them your own, make them tailored to your business. Having a good plan, who's going to participate in the inspection process, who needs to be notified, who's going to be the folks that go out on the production floor and make those minor corrections. And then ultimately, big one is who's going to answer all the questions during the opening and or closing conference.
For our clients who use OECS, should they be calling us if an OSHA person shows up at the door?
Absolutely.
Probably one of the first people they call.
Yep. I agree. Thanks, Mark. And then we offer this OSHA at your door quick card. If you are a client of OECS, just ask one of your associates.
And it's really simple, even if definitely ask us, but identify their verification of who they are, get a hold of management, get a hold of your safety supervisor, get a hold of us. Stop work if possible at the facility, make sure things are cleaned and picked up. Don't forget to take notes and photographs of what's going on with videos and that kind of thing. Keep that OSHA inspector focused on the path.
Absolutely.
Very bottom one, have a positive attitude when they're there, because that will definitely come across and it just makes things a whole lot easier.
So today, I hope this was an impactful training. I hope you learned a lot from the webinar today, and please rate us. How did we do? Number 3 is we gave you very helpful information.
2, we gave you some good information with some good takeaways.
And number 1 would be we missed the mark. And as the tally goes through, we'll give you the results. Okay. And then once again, if you do have additional questions that possibly were not answered during today's webinar, please get a hold of me. I can be reached at dannyh@oecscomply.com. There's my cell phone number.
And you could get a hold of myself, Bob Williams. You see my email address and my phone number, just like Danny's. You can also get a hold of our offices here in the cities. Even if you're not in the cities, you can get a hold of us, because then our people here at the office will direct your phone call to one of us, whether it's Danny, whether it's myself, or one of our other associates.
Good advice. And then thank you, our safety partners. Thanks for making your communities, the local communities, a little more safe each and every day.
What questions do you have?
We didn't have a lot of questions in the chat, but and I answered a question, but I can address it again from Carol. She asked, hey, do we need fall protection if you're using a scissors lift with a cage?
Typically not in a scissors lift. However, you as the employer can mandate it if you think it's required.
Yep, absolutely. Because scissor lifts are considered mobile scaffold, which is in the OSHA standards.
Right. So the guardrails around the platform are your form of fall protection.
That's it. Those are the only questions.
Nice.
Okay. Well,
very good. Thank you all for participating. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you soon.
make
Take
it
care.
safe. Thank you so much.